So hello and a warm welcome also from my side. Our panel is about urban sustainability, green design, planning and infrastructure. So I think on that topic we can talk for hours. So therefore we will focus on livable cities and how to transform our existing cities. We will talk about infrastructure and offices, and we will have, or we will try to think about what could that mean for the Ukraine, due to the fact the experiences we have here on with my panelists. But first of all, we will start with the panelists, and Natasha, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about your experience and your connection to the Ukraine.
First of all, thank you for having me here today. I am to represent the Roskvit NGO. We were founded last spring in response to the war, and we are over 80 professionals now from Ukraine and beyond who have joined the forces to develop knowledge, methodologies for the sustainable reconstruction. At the moment, we are supporting Ukrainian municipalities with a range of initiatives that include the capacity building, preparation of comprehensive city strategies, urban design, policy advising, and preparation of pilot projects. With providing our expertise and guidance to local communities, we aim to foster sustainable reconstruction and to bring a brighter future for Ukraine.
Hello, my name is Raymond Pitsman, Vice President for Network Expansion, Logistic Network Expansion and Real Estate. But I guess today, kind of a disclaimer, I'm not talking so much about Zalando, I'm just talking about my passion, what is really close to my heart, because I'm in construction and delivering networks since almost 25 years. I started my career in Amazon in 1999, so I have this pioneering mindset. And the important part is really for me to make a change. Because I think every human being has this small area of influence where you can actually make a difference. And that's what I'm trying to do in the part what I'm doing for construction, in offices, in real estate, that we are changing certain things. It's a little bit like Hirschhausen said during the gala, what he learned from Luisa Neubauer, so the old white men trying to clean up the mess what we have created. So that's a little bit my mission.
So, my name is Andreas Kleser. I'm representing the energy infrastructure solutions business of E.ON. We as energy infrastructure solutions, we are the change agent for decarbonization and for sustainability in cities and industries, and we are building decarbonization solutions for our partners in industries. So we are reusing energy, we are delivering renewable energies to our customer, and also changing the energy infrastructure in cities. So mainly about heating and cooling, but also about connecting different sectors of mobility to heating, to cooling, to electricity. In this area, I'm responsible for global sales and marketing and business optimization activities, and happy to discuss here in this panel this interesting question.
So when we are talking about livable city, it would be interesting what comes in mind. I think each one could think about which is a livable city, an existing city, and it would be interesting for me, which is your lovely city, an old one, a new one, new build. That would be very interesting, and why?
Well, I was thinking in Ukraine it would be very difficult to name a truly livable city even before the war, and this is my personal pain. But in Europe I could name many. This spring I've been to Copenhagen, to Zurich. I live in Porto now, and they are all livable cities. Here in Berlin, I stopped in Charlottenburg, and I think that's a very livable neighborhood here. For me, the livable city is a walkable city where the services and working places are within the walking distance. The green city with a lush urban nature and biodiversity, the effective public transport, and the vivid street life. That is, in a nutshell.
Raimund, from your side?
I think that it's always hard to speak about livable cities because you have to live in the city, really live. But from having many visits, I think Copenhagen is certainly one. I love Paris because you can see the dynamic changing to this 15 minutes city in the moment, and you can really feel it every time I go there. And that's probably the part, seeing that there is somebody with a vision and really working with a long-term plan to implement it, but also Berlin. I think if you look in the hoods, for example, I live in Kreuzberg. Berlin is a livable city. The problem is a little bit the connection between the Bezirke. For example, coming from Kreuzberg to Tegel is maybe not the easiest way. But I think Berlin has also many elements what is a livable city, but also a lot to do.
Yeah, so difficult question. So I'm living in Essen. I love my city of Essen. But actually, what can I say when being here than Berlin? And why Berlin? Berlin is really a growing city. Berlin is a city that is changing, transforming, and we have so many good projects also as E.ON here in Berlin. So exactly where you are here, in this old place of the airport of Tegel, we are together with the city and together with the partners are really rebuilding this to a new city quarter and reusing the energy and using the energy that is really around here. And we have more examples of reusing energy because this is something I think what is the most important in the city, to get more energy into the city and reusing it many times. So I think Berlin would be my answer.
So the good thing, I heard a lot of examples. We don't have to think about how to reach that. I think even if you look in Europe, there are a lot of old cities with a high quality, and the question would be how to get them more sustainable and more livable than they are already. So urban sustainability, what does it mean for you? What are the criteria? And I'd like to start with you again, Natasha. What is urban sustainability for you?
Thank you for this question. As an urban planner on neighborhood level, mostly in my work, I choose to stick to the principles of the sustainable urban development formulated by the UN Habitat quite some years ago. And these principles would be for a sustainable neighborhood, you have to have extensive streets network, that about 30% of the land area for the streets, then the mix of land uses, that means at least of 40% of the floor space dedicated to economical use, not only to housing. The mix of social mix of typologies of buildings and tenures, and the density of the population, of course. The density for a sustainable neighborhood has to be at least 15,000 inhabitants per square kilometer to prevent the urban sprawl.
So you mentioned 50,000. Raimund mentioned 15 minutes before. So Raimund, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the principle of the 15 minutes city and what does it mean exactly?
So the vision of this 15-minute city is actually that everything is in reach of 15 minutes, that you can actually go to all the shops, that everything is in close neighborhood, is actually going back from these big shopping centers far outside the city. It's really that within the city you can do everything. Shopping, you maybe get your pickup stations for the e-commerce. That's a bit the vision. And also in general for the sustainable city, I think it's really important that it's not only being green and sustainable from an energy aspect, it's also from a social aspect. I also agree that we have to get rid of of this huge space what we waste for streets. We have to find other ways of commuting and transportation. But it's also very important that the social aspect, it should be a home and a marketplace for everyone where people can interact and meet and actually develop the city together.
Yeah, so for me, when we talk about sustainability in cities, it's really about efficiency. So I personally think we are using 60-70% of our energy in cities, and it's not using the energy efficient and all pollution of waste heat into the cities, like from data centers, and not making use of the energy what we have in an efficient manner, it's really a crime, to be honest. And for me, a sustainable city is where the city reuses its energy, not need so many energy from outside in, but reuse it in a very efficient manner. For if you have waste heat from data centers, you can reuse it for heating. If you have a heat pump, you can reuse for cooling, or so HVAC system, you can reuse the heat also for heating, and so getting the energy in circulation. This is for me sustainability. It's like a symbiosis, like in a forest, to reuse it as efficient as possible.
So Andreas, we had that before in our talk that you said, okay, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, all your friends said, infrastructure, how boring is that?
Yes.
I think even if we think about a livable city, we're not thinking in first matter about infrastructure. We are thinking about how livable, about green, about where to go shopping, where to live. How important is infrastructure, and how massive is it what we have to change there in the upcoming years?
So our infrastructure, what we have in the city, is not built for the demand what we have today. So we have not built our infrastructure for heating to reusing waste heat. Waste heat needs very low temperature to be transported from one house to the other. So high temperature systems are not helping there. So you need to reduce, you need to change the energy flows, you have to reduce the energy that you can really feed in the waste heat. And this is an important topic for me. We need to think of the energy infrastructure of the future if we are building cities to really fit our demand, to build it in an efficient way. And it's easy to do it in new build. And I think we have very good solutions for new build. But the challenge is in the cities, and I think also Robert Habeck said it, and you see it in the German newspaper. 100,000 connection to district heating is a very ambitious target, but it's always also something where you need to think about how to get the energy transported in an efficient way. Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about not only the new buildings. I think the new buildings, we have reached a very high standard, actually, even in a matter of sustainability. Let's talk about the existing buildings. I think they are the real problem we have to solve. And first of all, let's have a look in the Ukraine. Natasha, when we think about the Ukraine and the pictures we're seeing actually, of course, there's massive housing destroyed already. But what about all the other still existing buildings? And we are thinking about rebuilding the Ukraine in the upcoming years. From your perspective and you're knowing about that country, would it be the right to rebuild the old cities? Should we transform them? Is it, even if I think here about Berlin, we know the Plattenbau, and even from that aspect, there are a lot of houses in Ukraine as well. What do you think? Is it possible to bring them on a new standard? Should we develop only new buildings, or what is your feeling?
I think that's a very interesting and important question. Roughly half of Ukrainian households live in Soviet-era mass-produced buildings. They are very energy inefficient, and because we have so many of them, we will have to transform them somehow. It will not be possible in the upcoming years to build all the new buildings. And apart from this is not possible, these buildings are a part of our DNA. We are attached to that. I think every Ukrainian architect has ideas how to transform these buildings and the neighborhoods. And but unfortunately, until now, we don't have any quality example of the reconstruction of such buildings. The reconstruction that is done is done with such quality that we will need another reconstruction in 10, 15 years, and this is not is not a sustainable solution at all. I think we need mass and mass reconstruction, which will include the prefabrication and will speed up the process. And it should not only include the energy efficiency improvements, but the improvement of the public space of these Soviet microrayons, the quality of the architecture of these buildings, and many other things, like increasing the private to public index of the public space, increasing the density of the streets networks. Technically, it's all possible, but there are so many barriers to that, and we have hopes and we have plans, and let's see how we manage to implement.
Let's think further than only living. Raimund, you as well have the experience in warehouses, offices, and things like that. What about there with existing buildings? How to transform them? For example, in the warehouse sector, will we see there a lot of demolishing and then building up new ones, or is there a chance to renovate them and bringing them on a energy expansion as we have actually?
So maybe one thing also to add to the infrastructure or in general about planning, I think it's very important. There's this vision needed. You have to understand where you want to go. And the problem is sometimes that also with the infrastructure, we test new ideas against our current values. We think, how is the world functioning in the moment? But we forget that they will also evolve. All the surrounding, all the values we have around, they will also change, and that's what you have to keep in mind. And don't think black and white. And for example, warehouses, if you ask me, or offices, if you ask me the question whether you should destruct them or tear them down, that's the most terrible way to do it, because then you actually build a new building. And with all this, even if we are trying to fix this embodied carbon, but we cannot be as good that you can have a positive impact on the reconstruction. So you have to try to change it. So first of all is net zero operations, that you find that there's no energy consumption during the operations. Of course, you can do solar panels, you can look into the energy. And then step by step, whenever you do something, you have to think about changing the materials, and that's something what you have to do. The same as in office, for example. Even if we work mainly with developers, so we don't do our own buildings, then we would probably do them differently. But we had this up building in Berlin, what was actually a Kaufhof Galeria, and this was an existing building where we tried, and that was also very appealing to us, that we tried to fix it, in changing the main frame of the building, keeping it, and changing it with some new elements. And that's probably what you have to do to get more sustainable.
Andreas, coming back to infrastructure, I think a few kilometers from here, the politicians discussed yesterday, discussing today, what has to be changed in the next years. Thinking about heat maps of the communities. Yes. You mentioned some aspects before. What are your expectations? How long does it take? If you think that the communities are now responsible for that? Some larger cities have that already in place, but I think if it comes to Germany, a lot of communities even have an idea about that. What are your expectations and the expectations of E.ON, how to reach that? Even if you think about the missing people on the market, it starts with the connection to the house, but nevertheless, we need the new networks, we need the designers, planners for that.
So, as I said, we are in the middle of a transformation, and the transformation takes time. And when we think about 80% of the buildings we are seeing in Germany are already be built that are there in 2050. So we need to touch nearly every building to get it renovated and to get it transformed, to get it really on a journey to net zero. And what you said, when we think about speed, we have a renovation rate of 1% in Germany, and you really have to massively increase this to 3% or even more to get the energy consumption down, to get the complete system transformed. So I'm expecting that this will, as I said in the beginning, it will not be a boring time in the future. So we have perhaps the first 15 or 20% done. We need to have still a long marathon in front of us. And I expect that we really need to take up speed now that we can reach our target until 2030. Because when we talk about 100,000 connections, this comes with capacity in groundworks, capacity in construction. So I'm expecting this to be a very, very intense time. But I think it's something what is also brings the value and is not pain. Yeah.
Could it be also an option to have less space, starting in the living areas, but thinking as well about offices? For me, it would be interesting. You have 3 companies here. The table, how it works in your companies, how many people are still in the office? What is the percentage? I think, Natasha, with you, due to the conditions in Ukraine, you have to work fully remote.
Yes, we are. The most team of the Rosquit is working remote from different countries. Many are based in Ukraine, but many are scattered around Europe. Many are in the Netherlands, then in Italy, in Switzerland. I am in Portugal, but we all work together.
So, and the office will return. Then even from your side, or you think that does it really work in the same manner than if you would be together in an office?
In our case, we cannot speak about returning to the office because we were organized with the war, and this is how we are working from the beginning. But we see that the most effective work happens when we gather at some place. In one office, let's say, in one room, we try to have 2-3 day workshops from time to time when we have to speed up the projects. And at some point, I think we will have a base office in Ukraine, and until the war ends, probably in Poland.
Raimund, you have a nice headquarter here in Berlin, which offers much more than only office space for the employees. What is the percentage at the moment? Can you do a lot of more growth to get it full, or do you think about subleasing, or is it full with 100%?
Unfortunately not. I'm saying this out of this perspective that we have the office and it's really a nice office. But it's a bit the big elephant in the room, what happens to this new work. I think remote working is definitely here to stay. But on the other side, we also see the benefit of being in the office. So our occupation, so we have this policy 2 days per week. You should be in the office, even if nobody is really reinforcing it and saying, that's counting how many days you are, but that's kind of the rules, and it brings you to kind of a 40% of office occupation. And if you then, the problem with this in the moment is that you have this 40% office occupation, but you never know when. And usually you have this bell curve of, most of it is Wednesday, you have the highest occupation, and then you have to provide almost the office space for this higher occupation. And that's probably something in the future where you also need to use technology, that you have a better planning, that you say, how can we actually use the capacity in the office in a better way? And also, I'm also sure in the moment a lot of people speak about, we want to have this hybrid work, we want to be from home or even internationally. But I think in the long term, I see that the office will probably come back. For example, in my team, we introduced the rule, because we're also traveling a lot, that we have one week in the month where we have actually a collaboration week. And at the beginning, some people were also skeptical, saying, you force us a little bit into the office. But we just realized how energizing it is to come together in the office, have this discussion, have the serendipity, having this kitchen talk. So it's very important, and also have the mix of people. I think one of the most underestimated topics with the hybrid work is, you have most of the time the extroverts are coming to the office because they like to mingle and come around. But it also means a little bit that you are not taking care too much about the introverts, but they're also half of the population. So you have to create a world what is actually taking care of all these different characters and creating a world for everyone. Hence, for me, it is important to come back to the office and find especially good ways to do it, because in general, our office is already the worst utilized building, because when you look in the German laws, you could actually say 10 hours is almost the maximum. You have it for 5 days. And then if you look in utilization of flats, of hotels, they're actually all better utilized in an office. So with this, people working from home, you have to find ways how to utilize it in a better way.
Is it a comparable situation with the Neon, or?
Yes. So I don't have the actual numbers here today, but I'm estimating that we're having about 30 to 50% being in the office, and the rest is working remote. But I think it's not a general share. You can't say black and white. It's better in the office or at home, because some subject matter experts can be very 100% work remotely, but as you said also, we are in a transformation phase, we are in project work, we really want to change the energy situation together with partners, and it's really about creating innovation, creating new ways of thinking and getting diverse thinking into it, and this you need sometimes to be at one place, huddling together, sweating a little bit in front of a whiteboard, making a solution, because the energy transformation is not a walk in the park. It's really something that you can just do together. It's a people's business, and I'm convinced that exactly in this kind of engagement, the biggest value comes out of it. So I think it's very important, in my opinion, to be in the office from time to time, but also there are days and also perhaps weeks where you can really 100% work remotely.
Yeah, time is flying by, but I would go into the last round. You mentioned already that innovation will bring a lot, new technologies will bring a lot. We here at the GreenTech Festival, we are able to see here things we can use today, but there are also expectations about the next upcoming 10 or 20 years. What is your personal expectations when it comes to offices or to cities? What will there come on the table? What we will see in 10 years? What brings us forward in sustainability and innovation?
I would like to dwell on the Ukrainian cities, and I would like to see the greener Ukraine rising from the rubble of war, reconstructed with recycled materials, with bio-based materials, Soviet microrayons transformed into livable neighborhoods. I would like to see the sustainable urban nature, green and blue networks within the cities. I would like to see the energy transition to renewables and transition from car orientation to other types of mobility.
So that's always the big question, but let me also start a little bit again, what I said before, infrastructure, real estate is a long-term lead item, it takes time. And I think the first thing is that we have to start to create a vision, what we want to have. And this has to start today. So we cannot have it as a topic for conferences. We need it as an operational principle. So we need the masterminds to think about how could the city look in the future. As I said before, it will be so many changes. What, for example, would it mean in the moment we talk about electric car, we even talk about self-autonomous cars, but we still think in the same system as we have it today, but we have to think about different means of transport. So what does it mean? Would it make sense for me to have a self-driving car, assuming it will happen? My personal bet is in 10 years, self-driving cars will be normal in cities, in big cities, also for the reasons that, you cannot have a mix of self-driving and personal cars because the intelligence would be a little bit overwhelmed with the reactions of humans. But that's the vision, and if you think about it, what would it be? Then it's more like the app system we have, where we have horizontal integration, that you just use it as a transport means. So you order a taxi today, you will order your autonomous car, and this kind of visions. How can the city look like? How can we do for e-commerce? How can we get access for the parcels? How can we put in the infrastructure? And 15-minute cities, but therefore we have to start, and that's really something I'm so not passionate enough, patient enough. So we have to do something today, because it does not help to have in every panel the question, how could it look like? It's a vision. I have a vision how it could like, but we need bold people, making a change, like in Paris, saying that's my goal, and that will be my wish, that we really start talking with the best minds we have, and not just administrating the city.
Yeah. So in my view, innovation will not happen very much in that we see a not seen hardware for heating and cooling or for electricity that we've not seen before. I hope innovation really hits the market quite quickly. And this is what you said about system integration, about connecting dots to each other. A good example, what we see outside at our booth, bi-directional charging. Yeah, it's a car that is available out on the street and using it as a buffer for a solar PV in your building. So really connecting things, connecting the dots to get a system view, and then getting an innovation in regulation, in business models, and in collaborating. So this is something what my wish would be for the next years, bringing innovation in through digitization by steering the system different and bringing players, market, and different technology together. And this is what I expect very closely in the future.
Then thank you to the audience, thank you to the panelists, and I'm looking forward that we will meet here in 10 years and talk and see what really happened. And I really hope that we will sit here next year, Natasha, and talk about the progress in Ukraine, in a land of freedom, and what is really going on there with the new ideas, innovation we talked by today.
Thank you very much for that.